Hello, and thanks for coming along to And We Have an Office Dog, the digital agency podcast where we talk to agency owner-directors and learn more about what makes them tick. From the things that make them similar to the things they'd rather have known sooner, where they've had success and where they've learned some hard lessons. All will be revealed with your host, Chris Simmons, the agency coach, and he'll be talking to a different awesome agency person in each episode, asking them 4 questions and seeing where the conversation takes us over the next 25 minutes. Okay, so let us begin.
Okay.
Over to you, Chris.
Thanks, voiceover guy. And on the podcast today, we've got Simon, the founder of Eyeful Presentations. I'm excited for this one. Hi, Simon.
Hey, Chris, how you doing?
Not too bad, thank you. Not too bad. So the reason I'm excited about this one, and you'll tell us all in a second why, is you're not a typical digital marketing agency, but you are a digital agency. And I'd love for you to tell everyone why you are so different. Go.
Right. How long have you got? So we as a business are probably untypical for a couple of reasons. A, we do presentations. So Eyeful Presentations kind of does what it says on the tin. More than what most people expect, because I think a lot of people go, oh, you make PowerPoint look pretty. And that's how we started. But actually, we figured out pretty quickly that it wasn't just about tarting up slides, as we very dismissively talk about. It's actually the storytelling that goes behind it, the messaging, all of the sort of the grunty work that needs to happen at a foundation level before you even start thinking about the visuals. And then naturally off the back of that, training and using IP that we've developed over the years to make the presentation opportunity, which is huge. And I might be somewhat biased, but we all work so hard to get the opportunity to present to an audience that you don't want to fluff it up just because you've spent all of your time focusing on the wrong stuff and you haven't had that critical friend that says, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? So that's one reason that we're untypical, because we are a pretty niche player in the sort of the traditional agency landscape. But I guess there's also, when I founded the business 17 years ago, I'd never worked in an agency before. My background was B2B sales in the fintech sector. So I had a decent grounding about business, but I had no idea about the agency world. And we've kind of held on to that naivety and that ignorance quite strongly all the way through. So we don't really talk about creative directors, and we don't have the fancy job titles because I don't really understand what they mean. And we've kept
the people who have them. In most cases.
Over the years, I've finally picked up on that. It's okay. It's all subterfuge, and nobody really understands anyway. But so we kind of run our agency kind of the way that you would do a B2B, fintech business or software business, and kept it really, really simple.
I think, never, ever look at any of the recordings of my presentations, by the way, because aside from, them being mostly gags, they're almost entirely just GIFs, full-sized GIFs. So, your guys' tarting up department would have a field day at the very least. But it's so you work with who do you work with? What kinds of businesses?
Really boring question, sort of answer to the question, really, but it's pretty much everybody. Typically B2B, so we're the behind scenes guys for the presentations that you'll probably have seen from some of the biggest brands in the world. Some that we can talk about, people like Adobe and Microsoft, some that we can't talk about, all the way down to SMEs that realize that presentation bit's really important for them gaining funding or winning that next big contract, and want to come to us to really act as a critical friend to them from the storytelling perspective all the way through to the visuals, how they deliver it, and everything in between.
Wonderful. And you say you've been going for about 10 years or so?
Oh, about 17 years now.
17?
Yeah, 17.
Crikey.
Who would have thunk it? Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
So,
PowerPoint's been going that long, is it?
Yeah, every grey hair I can sort of
you can account for. So go on.
The reason I can kind of trace it back 17 years is that the catalyst for it was twofold. One was obviously there was an opportunity in the marketplace. I'd been on the receiving end of some really bad presentations and delivered some absolute shockers as well, but got a bit geeky about it and realized that actually there was an opportunity here. But also in my old life, I was flying around left, right and center and had a very glamorous sort of business career. But our first child was due about 3 months before or sort of after I started the business. So incredibly naively, I thought, okay, we've got a new mouth to feed. I'll jack in the well-paid job. I'll hand over the keys to the company car, and we'll start a business from scratch. And
as
you ever need motivation?
Yeah, that happens every time. Yeah, it's normal, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So aside from feeding your child, who's obviously older now, and keeping the business going, what do you think's been one of the main successes that you've seen over the years then?
In terms of single success, if I look back from today all the way back through the history, this might sound a little strange, but actually probably my personal biggest success has been creating a business. Now we're about 30 people. And in those 30 people, we've developed individuals to a level that's allowed me actually to start passing the baton on. So the last 18 months or so have just been remarkable in terms of the history of the business, the growth of the business, the good stuff that we've done as a business. A lot of that has happened in the last 18 months. And it's not been down to me. It's been down to two leaders that have both started off in relatively junior roles within the business and are now board directors and are fundamentally driving the business. That's why I call myself the founder, not so much an MD anymore, because they're doing all the MDing and I'm just pulled in as the grey hair to contribute.
Do you know, for me, I think that's the most exciting part of running an agency at that point, because if you kind of get out of your own way a little bit and let other people lead in the areas that they're best at, you can just sit at the top, making sure that the vision and the values are followed and the wheels stay on the bus from a financial point of view. Yeah. But otherwise, you can let people fly and do the things they're great at.
And it's quite sobering when you realise that you're not as good as they are, and it takes a while to get used to that.
Oh yeah.
Thankfully, I've never had too much of an ego, and so it's about celebrating their success. But like I said, the last 18 months, when I finally got out of my own way, to use that lovely phrase, that's when things really started motoring. And then you do say to yourself, bloody hell, why didn't I do this earlier? So it's knowing when to do it.
So a lot of the clients which I work with in terms of the agency coaching stuff, the why didn't you do it before? Why didn't you do it sooner? It often follows those kinds of revelations of this is great now. But if you'd have done it sooner, perhaps it wouldn't have been the right time. You might not have been ready. They might not have been ready. Something else, a little piece in that might not be ready.
Well, it's interesting. We did try it before and tried it for the wrong reasons. So brilliant person that came in as interim MD, fundamentally because I was cream crackered, absolutely shattered, and reached a point. And this person came in and they did a really, really good job in steadying the ship, which should kind of sounds like I'm bigging myself up, and I'm definitely not. But it was kind of we got as far as we got to based on nothing more than energy and personality from me, just kind of dragging everybody along and kind of cheerleading the whole way through. And when this guy came in and basically took over for 12 months, he did a great job in stabilizing and putting the right things in place. After 12 months, he realized he didn't want to do that job. After 12 months, I was ready to take back on that job, but I took over a much more stable business that was a lot stronger as a result. The number hadn't changed. That had been pretty stable, but all of the important but sometimes quite boring bits of the business, they were all working a hell of a lot better, and it meant that we could then start really pushing forward.
Absolutely.
This time round, really interesting is rather than trying to replace myself with one person, recognizing that actually you don't have to find your carbon copy and slot them in. Finding two people that are actually, Luke and Lloyd, who are the two sort of directors, commercial and operations director here, they're not polar opposites, but they're not. They complement each other massively, and actually having two to challenge each other and support each other and all of that good stuff has made a huge difference, and every business has benefited.
So to make a massive assumption, would one of those two guys be more operationally led and the other one be more sort of commercial creative?
Spooky. One's called the commercial director and one's called the operations director.
Well, there we go.
Look at that. It's almost like we planned it.
Well, you need a visionary. You need someone to be have that energy and the drive for creativity. You need someone else to ground everyone with, this is how we get that visionary bit done. And if you're at the top, keeping them from a vision point of view in line, then it works a treat. So that's how you do it, and you've done it.
It's tremendous. I'm going to say that's the thing that if I look back on now, from today, that's probably the biggest pride bit. There are other things that are ego strokes and successes, but that's the thing that's made the biggest difference to the business going forward.
So then, say for example, PowerPoint came out with a new feature, which was time travel mode, and you went back in time right to the very beginning, and you could only give yourself one piece of advice. What would it be?
It's one, and I think that actually probably scale, having enough confidence in myself and our business to scale at the right time and invest in scaling. So like I say, we're 30 people. We'll do 3 million or so turnover this year. So it's a nice business. We could be 3 times our size now if I'd invested appropriately at the right time. But for a number of reasons, most of which were down to my lack of. I was captaining this ship very much on my own, and everyone would look to me for the answers. So it would be difficult for me to sit around and go, "What do you think, guys? Should we buy that company? Should we do this and that?" So we didn't. Perversely, I actually really like the size we are now. If we were 50, 100 people, it would be a very different business. And I don't know if I'd want that business. I love what we've built. Everybody knows each other. Most people like each other. Of course, there are always going to be some frictions.
Yeah, of course.
And we all know where we're pushing. And as you get bigger, I can imagine that's a bit more of a challenge. We're all based on the one site, although we hybrid work. That makes the difference. And I probably, given the choice bizarrely now, would you want to be a 100-strong agency or a 30-strong agency? I'd go for the 30 strong because of the culture that we've built up here.
Yeah,
but that's accident rather than by design.
I think culture becomes hard to manage when you get to a large size, and that's not just because there's lots more people, it's because there's lots more personalities, and for it to be that sort of size, you end up having to sort of dichotomize the business slightly between different types of departments, and it kind of, without even unintentionally, creates a bit of a barrier with people and things like that, and that's where friction comes in, and it's really hard to manage that. You've got to have management layers that manage teams, which then things get diluted down slightly, and you lose a lot of that cultural aspect. And if you're in a business of say 30 and less, I guess like you say, everyone kind of knows everyone, so it's easier to communicate rather than being someone faceless like 10 miles away. Or another several floors up. It's a lot harder.
There's I don't know if you've ever come across it. There's a book by a guy called Mike Southern called The Beer Mat Entrepreneur.
Oh no, go on.
And it's I know Mike. We worked with him on a few projects in the past, but before I started Eyeful, so this is going back 20 years or so, I remember picking up a copy of that book from Waterstones on a very bored sort of lunchtime, thinking, that looks interesting and readable. And he's got he talks about the stages of growing a business, and I'll completely misquote him here, but there's a stage where he says you hit about 30 people or so, and he said the big sort of sign is when you start putting a lock on the stationery cupboard, that's when culture changes.
I mean, it's not wrong. It's I guess it's quite clever.
And he talks through it, and it's remarkable how, from the sort of the small plant all the way. He talks about the mighty oak and growing through, and there are certain stages, and yet he's absolutely right that the cultural challenges that you've got are difficult to manage all the way through. That said, working currently with a brilliant company, name drop, a company called Tech Data, and huge, the world's biggest IT distributor. Their culture is extraordinary, and they've got a gazillion people, and every touch point I've ever had within that business is culturally resonant. Yeah. It's remarkable how they've done it. So just because you're big doesn't mean you can't have a great culture, but I can imagine you have to work damned hard to get there.
Yeah, I think the core to culture is communication and clarity. Clarity comes before communication, of course. If you have lots and lots of people, it's really hard to communicate clearly. But if you've got really like super clear purpose and super clear values, and everyone, a huge part of that size, scale, and culture retention stuff is about hiring the right people. And if you're hiring that based on values and the purpose before skills and things like that, you can train someone to be better at their job. You can't make someone a different person.
So true.
So that's how you get to hundreds and hundreds and retain it. But it's a lot of work, it's a lot of effort, and you need the people that are doing the hiring and the firing to focus on the values first. That's the thing. Do they want the job? Do they get the job? Can they do the job? Are they meeting the values? Those are things that you have to kind of focus on. But yeah, absolutely. So is there anything aside from having the two Lloyds, or is it Lloyd and
Luke? Yeah, it's very
Luke and Lloyd.
It's Luke and Lloyd. Yeah, and I don't know why. Maybe it's my age. I constantly get their names mixed up, and they're like, we've worked together for 10 years coming on now, and I still get their names mixed up.
Yeah, I mean, not to liken them to dogs, but I do that with my two dogs.
They're very similar.
My parents did it with my sister and I. Not that we look the same, because she'd look terrible with a beard, but it happened all the time. It's just one of those things, I guess. So other than getting them in place now, is there anything that you've done in the past that you think has it's been a bit of a light bulb moment, and it's set you up for the success that you've had now? So something that's worked that way.
I suppose it's to your knitting is a sort of catch-all phrase. So when I came up with this ridiculous idea to start a business just as my daughter was about to be born, I had two ideas 17 years ago. One was presentations, and the other one was podcasts. Way ahead of so lovely to be speaking on a podcast that actually is working, because 17 years ago everyone went, what? That will never work, and the technology wasn't there, and it was a strange old thing. So that died a relatively swift death. Presentations kind of took off, much to my surprise, and it would have been really easy, and actually some notable examples of it in our very small niche sort of sector, of spreading yourself too thin. So just because you do presentations doesn't mean you can necessarily do live events, for example, or that suddenly you're also going to do websites or whatever it might be. So sticking firmly to our knitting was really key. And unbeknownst to me at the time, because I was just belligerent and sort of stuck with that, it's had a number of really long-term benefits. It's meant that our customers understand what we do and what we don't do. And so they come to us when they're ready to deliver, when they're ready for the value that we can bring. And so they won't pick up the phone going, I know you don't do this, but could you? Even though hopefully we're nice people to work with, and our customer relationships are very sticky. We don't have to do a lot of marketing to win new business, because it's about account management. But they know that we do a certain thing very, very well, and they'll come to us for that. The flip side of that is also that we know what doesn't suit us. So we have, not to say that we don't evolve, because we're always evolving what we do and how we do it, but we've never fallen into the trap of going, we'll do your website, I'm sure we can figure it out. And then
it's just a bunch of PowerPoint slides all stuck together and linked.
Exactly, and you whack it up in the cloud somehow, and that's how it works, isn't it? And
something like that.
And so that's helped us turn away work that would have actually been bad revenue. and I think that's really helped us. And it part of that is the services bit. Part of it's also the culture stuff as well. We know that there are certain brands that we don't want to work with, or certain industries that we don't want to work with, and being as tightly defined as we are, with a bit of wriggle room, means that it makes decision making very easy, and nobody, as a business, we would come to the same conclusion. It's not just from high, on decreeing what we do and what we don't do. This is a collective sort of responsibility.
And I guess the when you've got this right when someone calls up and says, I know you don't do this, but who would you recommend?
Absolutely. And we're very lucky. We've got a sister company called Sales Engine, which, very quick aside. So we were getting a lot of people saying, we need help with bids. So a lot of the big B2B companies that we work with, they're going through this long bid process. And sometimes they'd say, you get storytelling because that's what you do. Can you help us tell a story in our bid? And horrible idea. So, but thankfully our sister company, Sales Engine, excels at that. So being able to go, that's not for us, but we know some great people that love that stuff. And surrounding yourself with good partners, and in this occasion, on this occasion, a sister company, means that we can stick to our knitting, but still be a reference point, a trusted advisor to our customers that can kind of go, speak to those guys, they're great. So and that helps.
So assume people have managed to listen this far through the podcast and they're just about to get to the point where they're waiting for Simon's one piece of advice. They're starting an agency. They've just started an agency.
Right?
What's your one pearl of wisdom that you could offer someone?
At that startup phase, this is going to be a peculiar one, but trust me, it is so powerful, which is embrace your naivety. Okay. And I'm so glad I did. I'm so glad I didn't know what I know now when I started the process, because
that's nice.
Purely because not that I think I'd probably still go down that route, but I'd almost be flinching before I got hit. There is something really empowering about not really having much of a clue about what's around the corner, and going around the corner anyway. Obviously, you've got to have a plan and a strategy, and thankfully we have those things in place. Yeah. But sometimes stuff just comes at you. One of the stories that I've shared before is where we had in the very early days we had a phone answering service where one of those simple things, you just sign up and it's an 0845 number, and they pick up the phone, answer as Eyeful presentations, take down the information, and then you get an email saying, call this person back. Unbeknownst to us, that company had messed up somewhere in their database, and our 0845 number had also been printed on 1 million Tesco yogurt pots as their helpline.
Oh no!
Yeah, hadn't seen that one coming. There's nothing in the plan that says this is what you do when suddenly your number becomes the Tesco yogurt and smoothie helpline.
In the words of Donald Rumsfeld, that's an unknown. You do not know that you do not need to know that. Whoa, okay.
Yeah. Carry on. And so there was this weird protracted sort of period where they said, we've messed up. And I said, well, but it's on our advertising, it's on everything. Yeah. So what are we going to do? And one of the solutions they came back with is, good idea, right? Get through to the number and then press 1 if you want presentations, or press 2 if you want to talk about your yogurt. It's like, well, how's that going to work? So we managed to get ourselves through that. But that's an example of, and I now laugh at it, but I do remember holding my infant daughter and chatting to her, and her looking at me going, what the hell do I do with this?
Yeah.
And that's been part of the joy of it. You can only start a business and grow a business if you absolutely live it and love it. And I still, now 17 years down the line, and the guys are running the business, not me. There's not a day goes by where I'm not thinking of a new angle or something new to bring to the party. But it's by choice, because I love it, not because I have to do it.
That's lovely. But I mean, that's a lovely bit of advice to end the podcast on. Embrace your naivety. Final snap poll question: PowerPoint, Keynote, or slides?
None of those until you know what your story is.
There we go. Perfect. and every single digital agency owner right now is as they're listening to this, looking up your website to get in touch to build presentations that win their pitches.
We're here to support you in whatever way we can.
And our number is 0845 something and press 1 for yogurt pots.
Problems with yogurts, give us a call. Yeah.
Thanks for coming along, Simon. It's been lovely to have you on.
Thank you, Chris. Been a really enjoyable chat. Thank you so much.
And in our next podcast, we'll be talking to another agency leader to talk about the things they've learned and the stuff that they've taken away from it along the way. Thank you.